Sambujo. call upon the Tathagata Amida to enter this dojo, as we joyfully scatter flowers of welcome. We respectfully call upon the Tathagata Shakyamuni to enter this dojo, as we joyfully scatter flowers of welcome. We respectfully call upon the Tathagatas of the 10 directions to enter this dojo, as we joyfully scatter flowers of welcome. On this occasion of the 2020 All War Memorial Service, the members of the Venice Hongwanji Buddhist Temple have reverently come before Amida Buddha in memory of all those beings that have lost their lives to the human acts of war. With deepest reverence and gratitude for the all-embracing wisdom and compassion of Amida, we recite the name Namo Amida Butsu. If you'll please put your hands together and repeat after me. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namondos, 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 namondos. Namondos, 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 namondos. Jin no, no shi shi jin toke meryo ken kodai shi jin yo onyo iso jin no dai sen Dharma sabes I shall follow ano shoji ifukenat sejoi Ainin shoji yozen sanai shine injo ose takebetsu benyo shigan isai Isadai an eshi ubet yakusen nagenan muryo daisho shunyo goja Isai Ito Sabet Benyo Gedo Enjo Ugyot Inyo Goja Obetsu Sekai
Good morning and welcome to this morning's service. I'm Barbara Fukuji and Phyllis.
日曜礼拝にご参拝ありがとうございます。私は林原フィルスと申します。私たちは司会者でございます。
We will begin with the golden chain.
お勤めはゴールデンチェーンでつきたいと思います。
I am a
link in Amita's golden chain of love
that stretches around the world. I will keep my link bright and strong. I will be kind and gentle to every living thing and protect all who are weaker than myself. I will think pure and beautiful thoughts, say pure and beautiful words, and do pure and beautiful deeds. May every link in Amita's golden chain of love be bright and strong, and may we all attain perfect peace. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Our first Gatha will be Hotoke-sama, led by Reverend Corey. Afterwards, Reverend Corey will lead us in the three treasures.
最初の産物が仏様を歌いたいと思います。それに引き続き、Three Treasures、三キヤ門を先生に従って拝読いたします。
No, no, no. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namondos, namondos, namondos. Namondos. Sankye Mon. Ninjin ukegatashi ima sureni uku. Upno kikigatashi ima sureni kiku. Ono ni konjo ni mukate dose zumba sarani izure no sho ni mukate ka kono myo dosen. Daishu moro tomo ni shishin ni sammo ni kieshi tate matsuru beshi. Mizu tara butsu ni kieshi tate matsuru. Masani negu waku wa shijo to tomo ni. Daido o taige shite mujo iyoko san. Mizu kara ho ni kieshi tate matsuru. Masani negu waku wa shijo to tomo ni. Fukaku kyoso ni irite chie umi no gotoku naran. Mizu kara so ni kieshi tate matsuru. Masani negu waku wa shijo to tomo ni. Daishu o tori shite issai muge naran. Mujo jinjin mimyo no ho wa. 百千万号にもあよことかたし、我今検問し受持することを得たい。願わくは如来の真実義を芸し立て祭らん。ナモンドス、ナモンドス、ナモンドス、ナモンドス、ナモンドス。The three treasures. Hard is it to be born into human life. Now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the teachings of the Blessed One. Now we hear it. If we do not deliver ourselves in the present life, no hope is there that we shall be free from suffering and sorrow in the ocean of birth and death. Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I put my faith in Buddha. May we all together absorb into ourselves the principle of thy way to enlightenment and awaken in ourselves thy supreme will. I put my faith in Dharma. May we all together be submerged in the depth of thy doctrine and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. I put my faith in Sangha. May we all together become units in true accord, in thy life of harmony, in a spirit of universal brotherhood, freed from the bondage of selfishness. Even through ages of myriads of kalpas, hard is it to hear such an excellent, profound, and wonderful doctrine. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of Tathagata's teaching. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namondos, 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 namondos. Because we can't
We
hear
will
it.
now have Reverend Howard introduce our guest speaker for today.
今からコリ先生は今日の有名なゲストスピーカーを紹介お願いいたします。
Hello, everyone. Again, thank you for joining us today for this all-war memorial service, which recognizes originally started as the atomic bomb service, which was last week, but we had other things. So we are fortunate enough to have a guest speaker today, a very important person, very influential person, and I'll tell you why too. He's very important to me, especially I have a nice story he doesn't know about yet. But this is Reverend Reverend Dr. Duncan Williams. I'm so nervous. Sorry, everyone. He was ordained as a Soto Zen Buddhist priest at Hotoke Temple, Nagano, Japan in 1993. He served as a Buddhist chaplain at Harvard University, where he received his PhD in 2000. Currently, he is a professor and the chair of the USC School of Religion and director of the USC Shinso Ito Center for Japanese Religions and Culture in Los Angeles. Previously, he held the Ito Distinguished Chair of Japanese Buddhism at UC Berkeley and served as the director of Berkeley Center for Japanese Studies. Williams Sensei is the author of the LA Times bestseller, American Sutra, A Story of Faith and Freedom in the Second World War, about Buddhism and the World War II Japanese-American internment. The Other Side of Zen, A Society History of Soto Zen Buddhism in Tokugawa, Japan, and the editor of 7 books, including Issei Buddhism in the Americas, American Buddhism, Papa Japan, and Buddhism and Ecology. He serves as a National Steering Committee board member of organizations ranging from the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History, the Harvard Pluralism Project, and Sutra for Solidarity. He has written op-eds about Buddhism for the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post. Served as a Buddhism consultant for TV shows such as AMC's The Terror Infamy, Season 2, and Amazon's The Man in the High Castle, Season 4. And his non-academic writings can be found in Tricycle, Lion's Roar, and Buddha Dharma. So to show a lot of our members and went to see William Sensei at Janum last year. They got really excited, and this is his book, American Sutra. So if you don't have it, please go buy it. But also, so my Bachan, I always thought she was Higashi member. She would go down, we go to drop her off on 3rd Street for service on Sundays. And then she would walk with my great aunt back to Nishi, and we would go home every Sunday. And so I always thought she was a Higashi Buddhist Temple person. It turns out, after she couldn't walk anymore, she decided not to go to Higashi as much because she said she really wasn't Higashi. There's a good reason why. It's an amazing, very amazing reason why. She grew up Nishi Hongwanji. Her father, as many of you know, was a Kaikyoshi minister for Fresno and even Pasadena, Alameda, and things like that. But her great uncle was a Rinban at Higashi Hongwanji in downtown LA. And so out of her familial duty and respect for her uncle, she attended Higashi for many, many years. And so I didn't actually know this until maybe 5 years ago. And I actually never saw a picture of I didn't really actually know he was a Rinban or anything. Ministers told me, and I saw his picture. The only picture I've ever seen of him is at Higashi Hongwanji in their lobby. And then after William Sensei's book came out last year, I happened to be visiting Nishi Betsuin, and one of my aunts came up to me on my mom's side and said, "Look, on page 120, there's a picture of my great uncle, Izuhara Sensei, or Rinban Kankei Izuhara." So this is the second known photo to me of this great uncle that was so influential to my Bachan that we thought she would, my siblings and I thought she was Higashi Hongwanji member. So I think, even though he's not here physically, virtually, I'd like to send my deepest gratitude for him writing this book and finding this second picture of my great uncle, Rinban Kamke Isohara. So without further ado, I shared my story and gratitude to William Sensei for doing such wonderful work. Everyone, please enjoy Reverend Dr. Duncan Williams. Thank you very much, Sensei.
Thank you so much. Sensei, thank you for the kind introduction and for sharing that story about Reverend Kanke Izuhara. And I wish I could be there with you at the temple. And I want to thank, Barbara and Phyllis and all the members of the Venice Hongwanji Buddhist Temple, because I received from many of you. I think this was folded by members of your temple as well as the members associated with the Venice Japanese American Memorial Monument. The other day, I think Phyllis and her daughter Lauren came to my house to deliver 6,772 paper cranes, different kinds of shapes and colors of wonderful origami. And so today I want to, and this is for, and I'll get into it a little bit later, organization that I'm associated with that Reverend Corey mentioned about Tsuru for Solidarity. And so I want to talk a little bit at the end of my talk about cranes and then their symbolism, especially for this service today, the All War Memorial, a service that was dedicated originally to those who experienced war, experienced the deep pains of war on both sides of the Pacific, but particularly those who experienced the atomic bombings in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And so I want to talk about cranes at some point, a little bit later in my Dharma message today. And also just wanted to initially though, thank all of you for participating in the crane folding, which has this very deep history connected to the atomic bombings. But I wanted to today share with you my Dharma message in the way that in my tradition we do it. I think some of you may know I belong to the Soto Zen Buddhist lineage of Buddhism. And so a little bit different from Hongwanji style of Buddhism in terms of doctrine and practice, but also maybe in terms of giving a sermon or Dharma talk or Dharma message. We tend to have a particular text and then the speaker is supposed to do a commentary on it. So we usually have our classical text from Indic or Chinese classical sources, and then we talk about that. And today I wanted to focus on a text that is called the Shiguseigan in Japanese, the 4 Bodhisattva vows. And it's something that we often in Soto Zen temples, we chant almost every service. And so I thought I would like to begin and end today by chanting this verse. It's 4 lines only. And then speaking of its English translation, and then giving my Dharma talk based on this text, these 4 sentences, these 4 lines. So if it's okay to do it the style of my tradition, I like to just chant and then start to do some commentary on the text. Shijo muhen sigando monno mujin sigandang omom muryo Butsu Mujo Seiganjo. Shujo Muhen Seigando, beings are innumerable. We vow to liberate all. Bonno Mujin Seigandam, delusions are inexhaustible. We vow to eliminate them all. Homo Muryo Seigangaku, Dharma gates are boundless. We vow to study them all. And the final line, Butsudo Mujo Seiganjo, Buddha's path is unsurpassable. We vow to actualize it. In today's Dharma message, I'm going to kind of go backwards. I'm going to start with that last line and try to give you my sense of what it means. It might have more different kind of resonances for you, and in the Jodo Shinshu, Nihonganji tradition, it might resound in a little bit different way. And so I want you to be open to that too. But I'll give you my sense of what this text is, I think, trying to tell us. And I want to base my Dharma message on those 4 lines today. So I said I would go backwards. So this last line, Butsudo Mujo Seiganjo, Buddha's path is unsurpassable. We vow to actualize it. So I want to just focus on this word, actualize it. He's saying that the line is saying that Buddhism is the path is beyond, unsurpassable, beyond any limitations that we put on it. And yet, so it's so vast and so infinite, and yet we vow to actualize it. What does that mean? And what I think it's trying to help us understand is that the ideals of Buddhism, such as the idea of equanimity or peace, today because we're doing war memorial, these kind of ideals that we have about compassion, about wisdom, about patience, all the paramitas. I believe afterwards we're going to recite the paramitas, all of those values and virtues, aspirations of Buddhism, of becoming free. All of those wonderful ideals of Buddhism are just words on a piece of paper unless we actualize it, unless we make it real. In your tradition, you chant, Namamida, like the Nembutsu is such an important part of the tradition. And in the way my tradition interprets the Nembutsu, at least, we look at the idea of recalling and remembering Butsu, the Buddha, right? Nem means to recall or to remember. And originally, Nembutsu wasn't just about uttering the name of the Buddha and reciting and recalling the Buddha by utterance, but it was originally a meditation practice of visualizing the Buddha. Nembutsu, nem originally meant to visualize, to kind of make that which is not present, that which is absent, to make it present. So that's the real meaning of actualize, to make something that is an ideal real, make something which is an aspiration a reality, and to embody it. So that's something I wanted to start with, that last line. We vow to actualize it. It's almost like any kind of ideal, isn't it? Like in our country, the United States of America, we have different kind of American ideals about equal justice under the law, the idea of due process or religious freedom. But again, those are also just words on a piece of paper, unless people actually embody and actualize it as a community of people together. So same thing in Buddhism. We have these wonderful ideals about the paramitas like patience, about having equanimity and peace, but these can seem like very distant ideals if we don't have a practice of making it real, actualizing it. So I think that's what that line is trying to hint for us. is to say, make sure that instead of just saying words, we are also trying to actualize, embody, making it as concrete and tangible as possible. So that's line number 4. So I'm going backwards today, I'm sorry. But this is what I thought I would do today. The next line I want to talk about is Homon Muryo Se Gangaku. Dharma gates are boundless. We vow to study them all. Dharma gates are boundless. We vow to study them all. Dharma gates means the way we come into, way we open the gate or enter into the Dharma. And that's a very true statement. Dharma gates are boundless, meaning there are many, many gates. There's no boundaries. There's so many entry points into the Dharma. It's not limited to 1 or 2. And the Buddha, as a teacher, I think was a wonderful teacher because he, we sometimes call him the great physician because he was a healer. He understood that the Dharma was like medicine, that just like you wouldn't give every single like if you were a doctor, a physician, you wouldn't give a child the same dosage of a medicine than an adult. And just like you wouldn't to treat a certain situation, medical condition, you may have more than one technique and something that's fitting and appropriate for your patient in terms of medical care. The Buddha had the same idea around the Dharma. So he gave many, many different teachings. And if you look at them all, sometimes there's some that are contradictory. You're like, wait, why did he say that? And it's because it's a different medicine that he was speaking, not as a generic lecture, but he was trying to say something to a particular person. And that's his Dharma. And we can all have that kind of approach to the Dharma where we are attentive to the situation, the time and place. And so when we say we vow to study them all, it means that we are paying attention and having some, because the idea of studying is really just about putting, in our tradition, we practice meditation style. So we're putting our mental attention seriously onto something. That's the meaning of the word study. It's to observe closely, to see things clearly, as opposed to unclearly. So that's the meaning of to study something, is to kind of delve right into that gate, which is boundless, and then to pay attention to everything, because it's boundless. Anything can be a Dharma teacher. In the Zen tradition, we sometimes say a little pebble can be a Dharma teacher. A large mountain can be a Dharma teacher. A friend of ours can be a Dharma teacher. It doesn't have to be a sensei in robes like me, today I have my robes on. It can be a small child. The Dharma gates are boundless. It means the Dharma is being taught all the time around us, and we can learn if we are paying attention. So that's the studying part. The next line, I'm going through all 4 lines here. The third line, going backwards again, sorry. Bonno mujin seigan dan. Delusions are inexhaustible. We vow to eliminate them all. Delusions. This is, one of the basic analysis of Buddhism, is that we have suffering in the world. We have war in the world because of 2 main factors. Number 1, delusion. Number 2, self-centered greed. These are the 2 points of human life that when we don't see things clearly and we have delusional views of the world, that can cause suffering to oneself and to other people. It can cause violence. It can cause large-scale state-sponsored violence like war. Delusion. Same with greed. This is the other main analysis of the Buddha. He said there are 2 main things that cause suffering that you can do something about. You know, he also preached shōro byoshi, you know, being born, shō, ro, getting old, byo, getting, you know, ill and having ailments, and shi, death. Those four things we can't avoid if we're human beings, he said. But what can you do? Everyone born, you can't, everybody dies, nobody lives forever. So you can't avoid getting old or getting ill at some point, you know. That's just part of human life. But he said you can do something about creating unnecessary suffering if you attend to these two factors, delusion and self-centered greed. And so that's what this sentence is saying. It seems like our delusions and greed, this is all bonno, right? This word that was sometimes translated as delusion, but it's kind of delusion and greed all mixed together, is inexhaustible. Inexhaustible. Our minds can have deluded ways of thinking, wanting reality to be not how it actually is, but how we would like it to be, how we aspire it to be, how we wish it were back then, you know, like is now, but not actually how it is. And when we don't deal with present reality as such, it causes never-ending, inexhaustible delusion. When we don't have a way to handle our own kind of greed. Greed is a very normal part of human life. We want things. We grasp after things. Even in spiritual life, people grasp, I want enlightenment, or I want X. I'm going to practice this to get that. But actually, that's actually a type of delusion too. It's because that's also never ending. And if you think in material terms, you know, you try to get money, wealth, etc., you know, material things to try to, that's part of our normal greed, you know, but then it becomes inexhaustible. Even if the rich, you know, really super rich people, they feel some anxiety and they want to get even, you know, now they have 7 billion, want to be 70 billion, you know, it never ends. That's the meaning of bonno, like that bonno or delusions and greed, that is inexhaustible. And so what's our vow? Is to say, we vow to end that. We vow to alleviate that. We vow to eliminate that, because that's the goal of Buddhism. Whatever our lineages are, no Buddhist is for suffering. No Buddhist is like, let's have more suffering. Let's have more violence. Let's have more delusion. Let's have more uncontrolled greed. You know, we're a religion that says we're going to try to alleviate that in ourselves, but also our interlinked world around us. We're going to try to alleviate that, to lessen that, to ultimately eliminate that. That's our big goal. But along the way, we try to lessen it and live our lives in a manner that's in accord with that path. So that's that second line. Then finally, let me get to the Shujo Muhen Se Gando. Beings are innumerable. We vow to liberate all. Earlier in today's service, when we were chanting the three, or reciting the three treasures, there was that line, Masani negawaku wa shujo to tomoni in the Japanese. May we all together. Shujo to tomoni. Shujo muhen segano. So it means that all beings, sentient beings, as well as maybe even insentient, all beings, human beings, animal beings, plant beings, all beings, that we together accomplish something. That's the hint that this line of the text is telling us. Shujo muhen se gando. Beings are innumerable. We vow to liberate all. These four vows are the vows of a bodhisattva, and we tend to think about the life of the bodhisattva, living the paramitas, the perfections, and so forth. We think about that, and we sometimes think about it as, well, some bodhisattva out there is going to come and help me. And that's true. Sometimes we have to be the recipient of kindness. We have to be the recipient of patience. We have to be the recipient of somebody's wise action. But sometimes we are the ones who have to be the wise ones, the patient ones. the ones that's going to dispense some wisdom. It's actually both ways because we are all in it together. Okay, so that's one thing I wanted to suggest, is that Buddhism is a religion of liberation. We're trying to become alleviated, free from suffering, both physical and mental, both ourselves and all beings. And that can't be accomplished by our privatized action, but by doing it together with others. And that's why earlier today, when we said of the three treasures, the third one is called Sangha, community. Narrowly, the community is of course, originally was just the monks and nuns in the community. Then laymen and laywomen, the 4 quarters Sangha was the original idea. But that's just talking about Sangha or community in a kind of Buddhist organizational point of view. But if we think about Sangha in a broader way, then actually it's all of our relations, all of the people that we are interacting with in our existence. You know, I was drinking a cup of coffee this morning, and when I think about that coffee, I have to think about clouds. I have to think about workers. I have to think about why, because if there's no clouds, there's no rain. If there's no rain, there are no trees or coffee plants. If there are no workers, there's no someone to pick that. If none of those things exist, I can't have my cup of coffee and or any food or so I'm completely enmeshed, interlinked with all beings. And so when we say Shujo Muhensei Gando, all beings are innumerable, we vow to liberate all, it means that our liberation as Buddhists is interlinked with the liberation of every other being, including non-human beings. So we're in a moment right now with a global climate crisis. We're in a moment right now with racial justice being an important national topic. We're in a moment of COVID-19 and of economic uncertainty. We have those 4 large things almost like boxing us in. How do we draw on our faith? How do we draw on our Buddhist teachings to become free? How do we get out of that box? And that's where I want to talk a little bit about these cranes. So, because this is a All Wars Memorial, we should recall that probably, although the idea of making paper cranes out of origami paper of some kind goes all the way back to the mid-Edo period, and making 1,000 of them, the senbazuru, the concept of making 1,000 cranes as a prayer or as a form of having a wish that needs to be fulfilled, a prayer for healing, a prayer for peace, a prayer to connect to others. This has its a long history, but it became most well-known in the aftermath of World War II, in the aftermath of the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. 2-year-old Sadako Sasaki, who survived the atomic bombing in Hiroshima, but who fairly soon developed many kinds of atomic bombing symptoms as a so-called hibakusha, or somebody who had an affected health situation from the bombings. And by age 12, she had been hospitalized quite a few times, getting weaker, developed leukemia. And one of her hospital roommates introduced her to the idea of folding paper cranes because her friends had made some for her as a prayer for healing. And so she began making those 1,000 cranes. And the story goes that, well, one version of the story goes she was able to make 1,000 cranes and even a few more before she died, with this very strong wish for world peace And if you go to Hiroshima today, there's a statue of her that has the words, "This is our cry, this is our prayer, peace in the world." So that's one version of the story. And there's another version of the story where as she was getting weaker and weaker, she couldn't quite get to 1,000, and her classmates joined in and made the rest of them to make 1,000. Both stories are, in some ways, we don't really know which is completely true, but both are actually valid stories. One's about a prayer, a wish that was intention was put out into the world, and now it's up to all of us to fulfill it. The other is a teaching about how we can't do it alone, that we're not alone in this world, that we need help sometimes, and that sometimes other people will need to fulfill a dream deferred or a dream unfulfilled. And what I wanted to end with was this idea of a crane, a bird going up in flight. Some years ago now, I was also talking to another Jodo Shinshu Nishonganji group, but it was the YBA convention. And there was some, I think they were teenagers, junior high school, early high school students. And I was doing a workshop with them, and one of them asked me a question. They said, "Sensei, what is, can you give us some formula or some easy to understand way to explain what is Buddhism to our friends at school who are like evangelical Christians and other, like apparently like every few weeks they would be approached and say, hey, do you want to come to Bible study, or on Sunday, you can come to our church. And they're kind of being pressured to attend a Christian church. And they were trying to say, but actually we already have we're Buddhists, but they weren't able to come up with a snappy response or something to explain what is Buddhism, so that they could kind of, have a stance about when they were asked about it. And so they asked me, can you come up with a easy to remember formula? And at that time I said, how about this one? Wisdom times compassion equals freedom. Let me say it again. Wisdom multiplied or times compassion equals freedom. And I said that we can maybe use a formula like that, because no Buddhist would say, whatever our lineage, that wisdom is not preferable to delusion, right? And no Buddhist would say that self-centered greed is a better virtue and aspiration than the idea of compassion. In the Latin word compassion, com means with, and pathos means to suffer together with. Have that empathy with all beings. That's our tradition, our Buddhist tradition. So, but it's when you multiply that you have liberation. But I told them, don't use the word liberation. Why don't you use the word freedom? Because in America, very few people like freedom, boo, most people are like, yes, we can appreciate a religion that has as its goal freedom. So I was like, you can go and explain all that in more depth some other time, but if you just said wisdom and compassion together create freedom, that's our religion. I was like, that's a little bit simplistic, but it might be good enough to go out there and say it. And the reason I thought about the crane and flying is that we do have a classical Buddhist text that talks about cranes and taking flight, or birds and taking flight. It says that when a bird truly soars, for a bird to truly soar, it needs both wings. And one wing is the wisdom, and a second wing is compassion, and they need to move and activate. Today we talked about to actualize, but it's also about activating. We activate both wings, and when they do it together, they multiply. It's not just a 1 + 1 =, it's a multiplication that lifts off, and the bird takes flight, freedom into the sky. And so that's what I wanted to end with today for my Dharma message, is that we can fold cranes for groups like Sutra for Solidarity. It's a group that sees Japanese American kind of experiences during World War II and incarceration, and see some of those parallels with what's happening around immigration, around religion, with the travel ban, or around race on the southern border, these families that are being separated. People back then experienced those indefinite incarcerations, unjust deportations, and family separations, and can feel some of that connection with what's happening today. And when we do that, even if they're not Buddhist or Japanese heritage or whatever, that's what actual solidarity or actual compassion means, is that when we say Shujo Muhen, or when we have that idea that we chanted in the three treasures today, of taking refuge, and we say, may we all together, it means that we can find opportunities of reducing suffering, because that's our goal, is to alleviate suffering, and that we do it together with other people. And that's what forms Sangha, that's what forms our pathway forward. And so, but I also like to end with this kind of thought as well. We sometimes think, about how do we alleviate suffering, and we tend to focus on, people who are in pain, substance abuse, in nursing facilities, in detention center, the different, and that's a clear and obvious way where we try to find ways to reduce and alleviate the mountain of suffering there is in this world. Economic uncertainty, COVID-19, racial injustice. There's so many ways in which suffering is hurting people, and we can put our gaze outward because we are interlinked and interconnected. But I always like to remind ourselves that the Buddhist way to do engagement, to work with each other, to work for freedom together, has to also include our internal state of affairs. If we are angry, violent in our own hearts and minds, there's no way we can talk about world peace. If we ourselves are not stable and have some sense of alleviation and letting go of our own kind of issues and traumas and hurts, and that we haven't attended to healing ourselves, it's really hard to do effectively. It's still okay, but it's hard to be effective in helping and assisting in this joint journey of liberation. And so when I was a young priest, I spent a few months in a monastery in the United States. I originally did my training in Japan, but in the United States, I went to one small Zen Buddhist monastery in upstate New York. And there was a young man who was sitting there. He's, I think, 16 years old. He was given he had committed some juvenile, like break-ins to homes and this kind of thing, but he was still a minor at the time. And so the judge gave him the option to kind of go to juvenile hall and some kind of young offender prison, or to go to some religious monastery. And I think the judge was thinking it's like a Christian type of place, but his parents put him in this Buddhist monastery. So there he was, along with other priests and trainee Zen people, getting up at 4 or 5 a.m., depending on the season, and then doing the cleaning and Buddhist morning service and sitting meditation. And most of the time we were like in cross-legged posture, sitting quiet meditation. And I remember the abbot of that temple saying, sometimes we think about the word compassion, or the word to activate our engagement of our ethical life, as something out there, something far away from us. But actually, look at this young man. He is sitting quietly practicing meditation. He's performing a great bodhisattva service to the world just by sitting there, Just by sitting there, he's not robbing people, scaring people by breaking into their home. Like just by sitting there, he's actually doing something very, very valuable to the community. So for different people at different stages in their lives or different life situations, what this all looks like can be varied. It's not like there's only one way to engage this work of alleviating suffering in the world, creating a more peaceable world. A world where when we have a day like today, All War Memorial, and we think of the different kinds of people who hurt from war, there are so many actually different ways we can alleviate suffering. Sometimes our work has immediate fruit, but sometimes karma works where you don't even see it in your own life. It's intergenerational. And yet the work continues. And that's why we have that first line, Shujo Muhen Seigando. Beings are innumerable. We vow to liberate all. The number of sentient beings that are hurting, that we need to, ourselves included, liberate is innumerable. And we yet take this vow, we vow to liberate all. Let me end with a chant of the 4 vows again. Shujo muhen se gando bonno mujin se gandan homom muryo se gangak butsu do mujo se ganjo shugu se gan o fuju suru kuroku wa Daiyon honshi shaka muni butsu高祖上陽大師大祖上最大師肉陽師立祭り無常仏家菩提を称言す。不して願くはしおんすべて法事三ぬ等しく助け北海の無常と戦地の窓かをせんこと。じよ三子いしふ。子孫無差目差ごじゃほろみ。Let me hand things back over to Barbara and Phyllis or Sensei.
Thank you, Sensei, for your message. I've never associated liberation and freedom with Buddhism, so this is something very new for me. Thank you. Next, we will recite the 6 Paramitas led by Reverend Corey.
Williams 先生、ご法話どうもありがとうございます。六原光を先生にしがって拝読いたします。
六原光、御仏様の御心に立ち返らさせていただいて、一つ、今日一日、清らかな眼、温かい情け、つつましやかな態度で暮らしましょう。一つの一日、腹を立てますまい。一つの一日、不平不足嘘を申しますまい。一つの一日、私の仕事に全身全力を挙げて尽くさせていただきましょう。一つの一日、夜昼常に私を守らせても御仏のご恩を喜ばせていただきましょう。一つの一日、南無阿弥陀仏を唱えさせていただきましょう。6 Paramitas, turning our thoughts to Lord Buddha. Let us throughout the day live with clear eyes, warm hearts, and humble attitude. Let us throughout the day not become angry. Let us throughout the day not utter words of discontent, dissatisfaction, and untruth. Let us throughout the day do our daily work with all our power. Let us throughout the day rejoice in the love and compassion of our Lord Buddha, who is constantly watching over us day and night. Let us throughout the day repeat the holy name, Namo Amida Butsu. Promise. The Lord Buddha is our eternal Father and Mother. The Lord Buddha always keeps watch over us. We promise to listen to the teachings of the Lord Buddha and perfect ourselves by following his ideals. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namon nos, namon nos, namon nos. Namon nos.
Next are announcements. If you have an announcement, please feel free to unmute yourself. Thank you.
どなたかお知らせがありますか？もしあれば自分でアンミュートしてください。
Okay, I guess I'll start. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Jerry.
Yeah, first, thank you everybody for supporting the Kenny's fundraiser, Kenny's Cafe fundraiser last weekend. So it was very successful. Hope everybody enjoyed it. We served almost 1,100 plates over the 2 days, which is a lot more than we've done in a long time for a non-Obon fundraiser. So thank you very much. The chefs were very happy to do this, and they're promising to do something in the future again. So keep your eyes out for that when it comes. We have senior Dana deliveries at the next monthly delivery will be next Sunday. And Elena can't be there because she's becoming an auntie again. And so she's up with her family in Oakland today, but she did ask me to make a couple of announcements. So first, we're doing 136 deliveries to members that are 70 and older this year. This time it was 80 before, so now we're up to we're down to the 70s and older, and it's 136 bags. So thank you for all who have volunteered to deliver. She asked me to remind you that anybody who promised to make a donation for the bags, if you could get it to the temple by Tuesday, there are 2 families that will be packing the bags this time. So they'd like to get started on that midweek or so. So something to look forward to then. We are going to continue the program. This is our 3rd delivery, or will be our 3rd delivery. I think we're going to continue the program for the rest of the year, although probably not monthly, but we're thinking about maybe 2 more deliveries. So maybe October and 1 before year end. You can look forward to that going forward too. Finally, made the announcement last week, our virtual Sangha is building. So we have some applications in already. So if you haven't heard about this, Reverend Corey is lonely at service. He doesn't have anybody to look at when he speaks. So we decided we're going to try to do what they do at the baseball games. So with a donation, you can have your image put into the pew. So we're going to have people sitting in the pew. So Reverend Corey has someone to look at. So they're life size, but they'll be just from the waist up. So you'll be sitting in the pew, and we'll all be there together for those who participate. So you can do this 2 ways. You can either take your own photo, or you can we have a couple volunteers. Phyllis is one of the volunteers. A couple others have volunteered, but they don't know it yet, to come to your house and safely take pictures for you. What we're going to suggest that you do is take a picture with your hands in Gassho, but we want your face up so Reverend Corey can see your face when he looks out at the Hondo. So get those in. For those of you who have already signed up, we'll send instructions on how to take the picture, or make arrangements for a photographer to come and take the picture for you. And the suggested donation is $75 for adults and $50 for children. So that covers our cost and puts a little bit of money towards our own hygiene fund. So we have about, I think, 15 so far. But, as Ron said, we can always take the back doors of the Hondo off and fill the chairs in the back of the church as well. So If you have any questions, just feel free to send us an email or give us a call and we can answer any questions you have. Otherwise, encourage your friends. If you've already signed up or are going to sign up, encourage your friends and others to join us so that we have a full hondo like we used to have a long time ago. And there will be a flyer about that in the delivery bags for those of you who get them too. So thank you.
Thanks, Derek. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ron G. I'm the president of the temple. I want to acknowledge the people who helped put today's service together. First of all, thank you to our officiant, Reverend Hyo Mon. Special thanks to our guest speaker, Reverend Dr. Duncan Williams. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to speak at our All Wars Memorial service. It was such a pleasure hearing your Dharma message today. And I'm sorry that I'm wearing a UCLA face mask. Thank you to our service chairpersons, Barbara Fukuji and Phyllis Ayashibara, our organist, Judy Hockfield, our meeting host, Emily Correa, our camera person, Kerry Kakirio, and ringing the Kansho bell, Tom Yamaguchi. And thank you all for attending today's service.
Okay, our last Gatha will be Sayonara, led by Reverend Corey.
最後の産物歌、さよならを歌いたいと思います。
We will now end our service with our benediction.
祝福等で終わらせていただきましょう。We surround all men and women and all forms of life with infinite love and compassion. Particularly do we send forth loving thoughts to those in suffering and sorrow, to all those in doubt and ignorance, and to those whose feet are standing close to the great change we call death. We send forth oceans of wisdom, mercy, and love. Namo Amida Butsu.
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 Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's service.